Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
I was such a fan of the Legion of Superheroes when I was a kid that I always wanted to work with this version of the characters that was designed back in the 1970s. They all had kind of sexier looking costumes that provided almost bikini-like effects for a lot of the characters, both for the men and the women. And there was a sense of the liberation of the age in the 70s. Long hair came into vogue, and there was a lot of feathered hair in some of the cases for the women, and it was designed by one of my favorite costume designers, the legendary Dave Cockrum, who designed the modern X-Men as well as the original Guardians of the Galaxy. And he did this first. He gave all these redesigns to every character. So when I got to create this single painting, I had no gig that had demanded it. It wasn't a deal I had made with anybody, so I started on the piece of art, worked on it for off and on through a year, pitched it to get it made into a print, which it luckily got accepted because it otherwise is a version of the characters that was no longer standing. This was sort of my love letter to the artists that defined that era and characters that really impacted me when I was a young child.
Chico and the Man will not be presented this evening, and the Rockford Files will be seen 1 hour later than normal, so that we may bring you the following special program.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Steve Lieber, I'm really glad you left when you saw that we were preempting the Rockford Files and Chico and the Man.
That made me so happy right there. I want everything I do from now on to be open with that. Wow.
I've been looking for, and thank God for YouTube. So many people have videotaped over the years specials from that period, and they include those preemptive announcements and stuff. And I got that. I got Magnum. And I got Ironside was the first one that I found. So, yeah, it's really become almost a quest to find those little interstitials and stuff to kind of throw in there. I'm like, nobody's going to copyright flag me for shit like that. Come on. Yeah. Those are funny. So, yeah. Good to see you, man.
It's great to see you. I think you need is filmed before a live studio audience.
Or in color.
Yeah.
So, no, I understand. Exactly, man. Dude, I was just telling Ilse Chartier this afternoon. I'm like, I'm going to be talking to Steve tonight. She's like, oh, he's great. And I'm like, yeah. I go, we, as you know, I'll tell the fans, Steve and I were going to, like, for years, we were like, hey, we got to sit down. We got to do something. I think we probably recorded maybe like, I don't even remember, Steve. I know we've seen each other at shows and we've talked about doing stuff for years. But back in 2019, the week of Rose City, I came in for the week, and I came into Helioscope with Jeff Parker one day. And my intent was to sit down with you and Jeff and other creators. And we were all just like, I don't know, it was like afternoon. I was beat. And it's just like, hey, let's just hang out and talk. And so I cut the recorder off, and we just had this great hangout talk and everything. And it was terrific. So I've been waiting really since then to have you on the show, and I'm glad you're finally on.
About 5 minutes after you left that day, Parker and I looked at each other and said, "Why did we record that? That was a show. That was perfect."
Yeah. No, but it was great, man. No, but truly, I mean, God, going back to certainly my first awareness of you goes back to Whiteout with you and Rucka, and I know you've been doing stuff before that. So really, give us the origin story of Steve Lieber.
Oh man, well, I started out as a child. Obsessed with comics from age 5. I still have the very first comic book I ever owned, a Submariner comic that Marie Severin drew. I obsessed over comics for years, drew all the time, but around high school I started getting serious about it. Somehow, for reasons I do not understand, I went to college for business instead of art. I very quickly realized that was the wrong move entirely. There's a notebook I have from my econ class where I started off drawing superheroes and airplanes and stuff just in the margins of it and taking my notes in the main part of the page. And if you flipped through the notebook, you can see every day the doodles and the margins were getting bigger and pushing the notes off the page entirely. It's like a time-lapse photo of me realizing what I needed to do with the rest of my life. Wound up at the Joe Kubert School. I went from a full ride scholarship at Penn State to actually paying to go to a trade school for comic book artists. Not the choice that my family made for me right there. Actually, I've told this story before. I'll tell it here. My father's reaction to hearing that I was giving up on the business school scholarship to go study comic books was to take out an ad in the local penny saver newspaper and sell my bed. He sold all the furniture in my bedroom as a response. Wow. Yeah, it was a way of making you can fuck up. You can't do it on my time. Yeah.
Wow.
So I kind of went into comics knowing that there's no plan B here. There's not really a fallback. And from there, I like it went like most comics careers. I picked up one job, which led to an opening, which sort of led to another, which led to another, which led to another. And next thing I know, it's 30 years later, my youth is gone. And I'm a lifer. I'm stuck at this.
Well, a body of great work. And in fact, we will talk about your work with Nick Spencer, but I want Carlos to know that we're acknowledging his comment that he loves Superior Foes of Spider-Man and The Fix from you and Nick, and I've got images of those ready to go. And, as Bruce said, sorry, you saying that you wouldn't do it again?
No, I absolutely would do it again. It's worked out really well for me. I think I got lucky. I think I got very, very lucky. For all the hard work, there's plenty of people who work every bit as hard and who haven't been able to make a career out of this. But things fell the right way, and I really haven't gone a day without having work on my table.
While I was going through your bibliography, I was pleased and had forgotten that you were one of the artists with Max Collins on the sequels to Road to Perdition. And that's awesome. And I love these Paradox Press continuations of the original story. So that's great. How did that happen?
The woman who was editing it, Joan Hilty, reached out to me initially to do one of the three volumes. They broke the sequel into three different volumes. The first one was by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and I think Joe Rubinstein. The second one was entirely by me. And they asked me if I wanted to draw the third one. And in the best choice of my career, I said, is there any chance I could just ink Garcia Lopez? And she said, I'll ask him if he's interested. And it happened. And that was maybe the best freelance gig of my career right there. I haven't done a lot where I've inked other people except for helping out friends on stuff. But man, that was like being paid to go to art school for 3 months, working over these gorgeous pencils by one of the best draftsmen the medium has ever seen.
I understand. He came to Chicago a couple of years ago and was selling original sketches and process pages as well. And you'll forgive me, my TV just went off. I'll fix that in 2 seconds there. Sorry, folks. Hold on. Come on.
Same thing happens to me, but with porn.
There we go. All right, that should work. No, I understand, and I bought a page that seemed to be a process page for the DC style guide, and it has 2 different poses of Batman. It has a Superman pose and a Flash pose, and they were all on one 11 by 8 by 11 like notebook size page, and I love it. It's fantastic. But yeah, my God, what a master! And there's a reason why he drew the style guide back in the early '80s for everybody. So yeah, he had such a gentleman. My God. So yeah, I get it. Do you have any original art of his?
Just the stuff I inked. Oh, actually, that and one other thing. I've got a Batman and Riddler page that he penciled and the great Kevin Nolan inked. And that's one of the ones that every artist I show it to just loses their mind. He manages to tell what feels like a complete story in 6 panels, even though the scene is essentially a talking head sequence. He almost writes an entire parallel narrative just in the pictures. Yeah, it's a clinic in visual storytelling.
That's cool. Am I right in the timeline? Was Road to Perdition before Whiteout?
No, it was a little after Whiteout.
Oh, okay.
98 through Y2K for me, and Road to Perdition was, I think, 2003, 2004.
Who did this? Is this you or someone else did the cover?
That cover is Frank Miller right there. Only Frank could figure out how to get cleavage through a parka.
That's awesome. Oh my God. So how did you and Greg get together for Whiteout?
The Yentl, the matchmaker on that one, was Bob Schreck, who had just founded Oni Press at the time with Joe Nosemack. I had kind of almost broken in through Bob. One of my first gigs was actually written by his brothers, so that put me on Bob's radar. And then after that, he picked up a sample that I had sent to Dark Horse and ran it as a story, which was very cool. And he knew that I was capable of a lot of different types of storytelling and that I liked working in black and white. So he brought me this. I don't know how Greg came on his radar. It might have been through Matt Wagner, actually.
Oh, because I always assumed it was through the Bat Office and everything, given that he transitioned from working with Denny when Denny O'Neil was in charge to then when Bob was in charge. So
Whiteout was Greg's very first comic. He hadn't done comics before then.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and as far as I know, Whiteout was the very first comic script he'd ever even tried to write. And the first comics person I'm aware of who was talking about Greg was Matt Wagner, who was plugging Greg's prose novels in the back of a Grendel comic that I had illustrated, which was this was a weird coincidence there. Yeah, that was a wonderful project for me. It was one of the best scripts I ever read. Certainly the best anyone had ever given me to work on. And at the time, my career was slowing down. Comics was kind of in the doldrums in the late 90s. All these startups had gone out of business.
Yep.
And I wasn't getting my phone calls returned as quickly as I used to. And at the time, phone calls. And I took the script on, even though it was for a small press, and it meant taking like a 60 or 70% pay cut.
Wow.
It was a giant drop in compensation, but it was a great story. And I was like, okay, if comics is going to wrap up for me, let's go out on a win. Let's do a story that shows everything I think comics can do and everything I think I can do. And because it was a small press and it wasn't for a lot of money, it only was very small at the time. I can set a few rules. I wanted to be the only person to touch the page. I've been on the assembly line before, and I didn't know how to set my collaborators up for their best work. I wasn't good at penciling for somebody else to ink. I didn't know how to let a letterer know what I had in mind for placements of things. So with this, I wanted to be the only person to touch the page. So I penciled, I inked, I did all the digital gray tone, or not, or the analog gray tones and effects, and I did the hand lettering. And I knew I could. I knew I could knock this one out of the park if it was just me, and it was kind of a Hail Mary pass, but someone caught it at the 1 yard line and took it in. And the book's been in print continuously since it came out in '98.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the movie experience like for you? Because I've talked to Greg about this in the past, but I don't think I've ever talked to you about it.
Ups and downs. There's the excitement. It went into turnaround twice. Initially, it was going to be Wolfgang Peterson was the director of Das Boot was going to direct. It was that was really exciting.
Sure.
That didn't happen, and then it wound up in Reese Witherspoon's hands.
Wow.
And her people commissioned a script, and they put an alien in it.
Ha!
I've got a copy of it. It's amazing. Like they just decided to remake The Thing with our
yeah, really.
And that in retrospect, I kind of wish they hadn't shot that one. I'd be much happier with that. And then the third time around, it wound up in, I can't remember his name. This is how long it's been.
The filmmaker. Sure, I'll look it up while we're talking if we can't think of it.
It wound up getting made, and I hesitate to say anything about other people's stuff because it's not my medium. I don't know what they went through to get it made at all, what kind of compromises that sort of thing requires. But it's hard for me to be a fair judge of it because when I look at it, all I can see is, well, that's not how we did it, and that's not a fair way to judge any movie or anything like that. Visiting the set was amazing.
Oh, that's cool. Dominic Sena, by the way, the filmmaker.
Thank you, Dom
and
Sena.
Kate Beckinsale, of course, the woman that ends up playing your lead.
The main image that I take away from watching the filming was the executive producer standing next to the producer, standing next to Dom Sena, the director, standing next to an assistant director. And they were all lined up both by position of power and by physical size, like a row of Russian nesting dolls. and they had like this giant bowl, big plastic bowl full of M&Ms, and they're all just crazy. And at one point they're trying to figure out how to make a shot work. There's a problem because an extra doesn't have the right kind of shoes on. Even though the shoes aren't visible, he has to run from one place to another on cue, and he can't get there fast enough with the shoes he has. So they send a production assistant to go find some shoes, and and while the production assistant's running, one of the producers just is there going $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, because that's how much money they're spending every second that film is not running. I was like,
wow.
Thank God I don't have to deal with anything like
Jesus.
this, man.
Yeah, really, man. That's insane.
I made that entire comic with maybe $65 worth of art supplies.
That's the beauty of comics, man.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, that's the great thing. It's just our imaginations and your talents and Greg's talents and wherever it took you guys. I mean, that's amazing. God, that movie was made in 2009. That's amazing to see.
It came out in 2009.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, they filmed in 2007, and it sat on the shelf for 2 years, and they did rewrites and reworking. They hired Greg as a script doctor, and then ignored every word he gave them, and yeah, it was a weird, strange thing to witness. I'm glad I got to see how the sausage got made, and it reinforced my eternal gratitude that I make comics for a living and not movies.
Have any of your other creator-owned things, like the stuff you've done with Nick, like the Fix and things like that, has that stuff been shopped around as potential films?
It's been shopped around. I've heard of meetings that come back to be third person. It's weird how out of the loop you can be on something you own. I mean, but like with Whiteout, there was a script already like commissioned and written before I was aware there was a deal. This stuff just kind of seems to happen. There's folks were shopping the Fix around. Folks have shopped Underground around. There was a student film of a short comic I did, and with all of it, I try not to think about it at all. It's like worrying about your lotto numbers or something.
I understand.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, that's right. And shame on me. I had totally forgotten about Underground with you and Jeff. So yeah, there's another great book and stuff. Well, and I guess is that coming back as far as because I see that's coming out later this year.
Oh,
and I remember you guys made that a few years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be reissued.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I'm really excited about it. Oni Press is bringing it back, and I'll be glad to see that back in print and to have it on my table at conventions again.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, man. Yeah, very cool. Wait, while we're talking about Nick and the Fix and stuff like that, of course, there's a great cover. Is that you?
Yeah,
I was going to say that. Yeah, all right, because that's the amazing thing, Steve. Truly, your art. You do different styles, and I think that's incredible. Comparing that to Jimmy Olsen, to of course Superior Foes of Spider-Man. I mean, that's the thing, and I really admire that about yourself and a guy like Stuart Immonen, who will change styles and stuff for different projects.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible, and I can't believe your mind works that way. I would think that it's hard enough figuring out one style of art.
I got a lot better when I stopped trying to create a style for myself, because I was such a natural sponge. I remember reading an interview with Gil Kane years and years ago where he talked about having problems early in his career because he would just glom onto so many different artists some of whose approaches were in direct opposition to each other. Yeah, I want to draw like this guy. I want to draw like this guy. I want to draw like this person. And it made it, he said he was like a cargo plane overloaded and unable to take off from the runway. And I was like that too for a while. So I figured out how I draw by stopping trying to draw in any specific way. How to put it? Instead of asking, how should I draw this? I would just ask myself questions about the story. These characters am I drawing? Are these human beings? Are these gods come to Earth? Are they symbols? Are they functioning? Are they functioning humans? I asked myself questions like that, and then just in the process of drawing and thinking about them as this other thing besides Superman, or whatever, the choices would kind of make themselves for me. They want to put something that's way more natural. But as a side effect of that tendency to glom onto things, I've got the ability to turn off my own approach and say, okay, how would so-and-so do this, and do a decent imitation. And it served me well on projects like Jimmy Olsen, where I had to shift genres continuously.
Well, that's yeah. Well, first of all, I want to go back to that fix cover. I mean, that is so Hirschfeld to me.
I adore Hirschfeld, and that magnificent abstraction, the wit, the psychology that goes into what he does, the beautiful substitution of pattern and mark making for the rendering of three-dimensional form. There's so much. I mean, that the origin of that cover came when I was just doodling out stuff, and this is I don't even know if I should tell people this. That big swoop at the bottom there. That's symbolic of something that I wouldn't normally put on the cover. Yeah, I'll leave
So
it
what
to
is
folks.
it?
Oh, the big swoop that leads from the guy in the floral print shirt to the image eye.
Yeah.
That's just a big ween. And it's like, what I was thinking, what's the essence of this guy? Well, he's just a hard on. He's just a dick. And I drew that, and it's a little like Hirschfeld. And I realized, oh, I could do a Hirschfeld for this. Oh my god! And then I spent the better part of a day trying to figure out what a Hirschfeld drawing of these characters would look like.
That's outstanding, man. No, it truly, that's one of my favorite covers.
There's no way the viewers will be able to see it. But my favorite thing about that was you'll see there's a little number next to the signature, and I wasn't going to hide Nina's because I don't know any. So I hid Sarah's name, my wife Sarah's name, in there a bunch of times so that people can pour through there and look for the.
Oh, that's great! Oh, fantastic, man. Sarah Richard, of course. That's wonderful. Very cool. That's great, man. Too goddamn funny. And were you coloring the fix yourself, or did someone else color it?
No, that was Ryan Hill, who's used to live in Portland. Now he's on staff at DC Comics, actually living in Burbank. And god damn, is he good? He got the funny. He got all the graphic requirements. He made it feel like this Funhouse Mirror LA, and there are lots of great coincidences. I'd randomly put a fast food place in there that was his favorite place to hang out. At one point, I just picked a high school to put in the background of a character. I would when I would get the scripts, I would use Google Street View to pick locations throughout Los Angeles to set scenes, and I just happened to pick a high school for the background for one thing, and it was a place where Ryan had gone. Like, oh wow, yeah, just one great bit of synchronicity after another on that.
That's cool. That's amazing. What? How did you and Nick get together?
Matchmaking via Marvel Comics.
Who was your editor that put you guys together?
Yeah, that was Steve Wacker, I believe.
There you go. Man, we miss, as great of a job as he's doing in Marvel animation, we miss him in comics, man. I miss talking to Steve, and I really should reach out to him and just get him on to talk about animation and stuff. But yeah, I've always enjoyed my conversation with Steve over the years. Absolutely.
Yeah, he I think had been, I don't know if he had edited or just kind of done some kind of supervisory thing when I did my Hawkman, or not the Hawkman, Hawkeye fill-in issue for Matt Fraction. So I was on his radar when Nick had pitched what was then called Deadly Foes of Spider-Man, not Superior Foes. He asked me, "Hey, Steve, do you want to do a villain book?" And I wasn't sure what that would entail, but I said, "Sure, yeah, that sounds like that could be fun." To this day, I'm not sure if it was supposed to be a comedy or not. Nick would write in really, really small batches, so I'd only get at most 6 pages at a time.
Okay.
And when I got the first batch, I was like, "Oh, there's places in here where I could really push the funny." And so I did that, and then he would respond to that and add more gags to the next batch, and I started gagging on top of that, and it was like a big improv troops game of yes and. Before long, it was the Marvel Universe's version of "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" or something.
Yes, very much so. Well, and they didn't know they were in a comedy, which is great, and that's to your credit to Nick's writing and stuff, and the acting that your visuals provided. Because they were very serious about what they were trying to do. But when you look at this group, and really, it's like it's fantastic that it's like they knew they were C-level villains, and it's like, hey, let's really get one big score. We're finally on top, and we're really, and it, again, hilarity ensues. It was a tremendous series.
I had never done comedy in, maybe a funny panel here or there for my entire career up to then. Till then I was the crime guy. I was Whiteout and Road to Perdition, and Jeff Parker's fond of making fun of a phase of my career from like 2001 through 2007, where every single comic I got hired to draw had scenes that took place in prison. So just one thing of prison bars after another, guys getting shanked right and left.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, so that was what I got hired for. I got hired for for men with scars stabbing each other.
And you're such a nice, gentle man. So that's.
I think my editors know me better than most.
That's awesome, man. Were you? Do you enjoy watching like hardcore violent stuff?
Yeah. Well, it's not the violence that I like, but I tend to agree with the worldview of dark and unhappy stories.
Okay.
I read a lot of crime fiction, and while I could do it, the idealization that goes into most superhero comics, it's not my nature. That's not how I see the world. I grew up in Pittsburgh in the 1970s. The industrial base is turning to a giant rusty shit pile, and there's a brain drain going on, and people are leaving town or taking a drink because there's no future. And that's the energy I wanted to bring to my children's entertainment.
Lately I've been and really especially I still have Xfinity for sports, for live sports, and they're doing their watch-a-thon week, and I don't have AMC Plus, but I was watching Spy Game, their new espionage show, and it's set in 1961 Berlin, and Cold War spy. It's like you had me at hello. So, and I've watched the first 3 episodes that have been released, and I guess it's not coming back till August, but it's a great series, terrific series. And so I can appreciate, and any really good crime stuff. Yeah, I'm totally there. But I will say I lean towards espionage as well.
Yeah, and even in that world, I'm much more inclined to want to read about George Smiley than about James Bond. I like reading about people who are barely adequate to the task that they're given. Not folks who are gonna make it and are gonna win.
No, you're right. Like as opposed to the Superman spies, the ones that make mistakes, absolutely, and the ones that really spies are supposed to be invisible. And I love the whole gimmick of James Bond, but he essentially is that oxymoron of a world famous secret agent. And in terms of, I love at the beginning of Die Another Day when he escapes the Koreans. And he swims to Hong Kong, and he's all bearded and stuff, and in his pajamas, and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Bond, hello, welcome. Oh, your usual suite and everything." And I know he's the Art Vandelay of secret agents. He's an importer exporter, of course.
Yeah.
But it's like, come on, man. Like this shouldn't work. And again, we all are just like, it's fine, just go with it. It's all right. So I am looking forward to. This No Time to Die. I hope it lives up to expectation. I feel terrible that they keep kicking it down the road. I was really hoping one of the streamers would pick it up and we would get to finally see it earlier than later and stuff. But obviously they have a lot of faith in it being a tentpole movie, so they don't want to, sacrifice hundreds of millions just to get it out there.
Yeah. Fraction wrote a James Bond gag in our Jimmy Olsen run. That's one of the best things I've ever drawn. Oh, it's so good. I wish I had the pages at hand so I could put them up. But we opened the issue with Jimmy Olsen doing the Goldfinger riff, where we see a piece of garbage floating through a river. And then the garbage emerges, and it's a decoy on top of Jimmy Olsen's wetsuit.
Okay, yeah, like the duck.
Yeah,
that when at the beginning of the pre-credit sequence of Goldfinger. Yeah. Sure.
And so he steps onto dry land, unzips the wetsuit. He's got his tuxedo onto there. He goes instead of a casino in Monaco, it's a benefit. It's a casino night benefit at a rural high school in the Midwest, which for whatever reason he winds up playing baccarat against Lex Luthor there. And then at the end of the issue, spoilers, Jimmy walks sullenly in his tuxedo back to the river, takes off the tuxedo. He's got another wetsuit underneath that. The water. And yeah, I couldn't draw it when I first got it because I couldn't keep from laughing. Sitting in a room by myself, in the middle of lockdown. Oh God, it was good.
That's excellent, man. Seriously, I mean, I was so excited to hear, hey, guess what? Matt's writing a Jimmy Olsen thing. I'm like, great. And it's like, and he got Steve to draw it. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. And I think Brian is probably the one, Bendis, who told me all of this. So I was so excited to talk to both of you about this incredible series. Yeah. Was it 11 or 12 issues? 12
issues.
It was 12. Okay, great. Yeah. And I mean, again, there's the title of the overarching arc in terms of who killed Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah. It was actually 12 issues plus. So we did over 300 pages.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And yeah, that's going to be the one they put on my tombstone right there.
You got years ahead of you, man. No. It'll be one of the planks of the of the bibliography. That's all right, man. But what a great, I mean, it's so much fun. And I mean, you and I are close enough to the same age. I mean, we grew up on the Silver Age reprints of Jimmy Olsen, likely. Superman Family was like one of my go-to books as a kid. And I love, it's so funny now. My buddy, I don't know if you know Tom Caters, another great podcaster. He did an entire series on the Jimmy Olsen Jimmy Olsen run, leading all the way through Superman Family. And he's years younger than us, and he loves making fun of Mr. Action when he was an investigative reporter. But when we were little kids, it's like, well, no, man, he was a teen photographer. He's getting older. Of course, Perry eventually is going to give him a shot writing his own stuff. And they were fun stories. They were just like these little non-costumed adventure stories of Jimmy getting into deep trouble. And it was all played straight, but it worked for me. I took it seriously. And you guys then put it on its ear, and just every iteration from Turtle Man. There you go. Hold on. I'm going to single you out there.
There's our Mr. Action iteration right there.
There you go. Yes, indeed. Nice. Oh, my God, man. No, Turtle Man and Porcupine Jimmy and Werewolf Jimmy and all the various crazy things that, I mean, the one, of course, that Matt and I are like, they went there. And again, it was the 60s. But like when he finds the old newsreel, the German newsreel, and he sees himself getting an award from Adolf Hitler, and then he travels in time and it becomes a real thing.
Yeah. We realize that you can't really parody this stuff because it no matter how far you think you've taken it, they've gone further. That's not an option.
Caveman Beatles, of course.
Yeah. It's all there. So Matt found. I think he. I don't know if he would phrase it this way, but one of his hooks was not the schizophrenia, the multiple personalities of the whole book. Jimmy has had so many different identities, and none of it seems to impact on him. And I think a big part of making the book work was figuring out what kind of person can live a life that weird and not go through it with PTSD or
it's like nothing phases him. Exactly. It's like, all right, I'm a werewolf this week. Sure. All right. No problem. I'll make it work. I mean, and again, that's Jimmy's tenacity. And that's, I mean, really, I loved Bendis's reveal that Clark does to Jimmy, where it's like, I'm Superman. And he's like, yeah, I know. Yeah. You know, just like, and he goes, no, there's no and, I'm Superman. Well, yeah, Clark, I know. Whatever. You know, it's like, hasn't fazed me in the years that we've known each other. Okay, if you really want to tell me now, fine. And it's just like, all right. You know, but that's what I love about their relationship as well. I think it's I mean, really, like, the key to the extended cast of all of these heroes is obviously, forgive me for stating the obvious, but like, you know, how they react to the hero. And Jimmy is like, they're friends, and Clark really likes Jimmy and doesn't think he's a goof or anything like that. He really appreciates, you know, maybe Jimmy reminds him of the way he was as he's younger. How do you characterize their relationship?
We have a wonderful scene in the first or second issue, I can't remember which one, where Superman and Jimmy are just hanging around with Superman doing a goofy interview for Jimmy's YouTube channel. And it's just them horsing around and trying to crack each other up like two friends. And Superman he's appreciating it because this is his chance to be a person. Yeah, this is a chance to be there with someone who doesn't want anything from him, who isn't looking for something, who just appreciates the chance to hang out with his pal. And you don't get a lot of chances to depict friendship in traditional adventure comics.
Yeah.
You know, if you do, it's a moment of camaraderie in between the battles. But Matt wrote this beautiful scene that's just about two friends being friends, and it's a glorious visual moment. It's just a great thing to have gotten to work on.
That's great. I remember in the Richard Donner Christopher Reeve movie when Superman is Clark and he's talking to Lois and she's like, oh, how was your first day? And he's like, oh, everything went swell or whatever. And then he just a throwaway line as they're going to the elevator. He's like, Jimmy Olsen is amazing. It's just so great. And it's such a genuine Clark moment of, hey, I really like this guy. And it's so funny. You know, I love it because, again, it came after these great Silver Age stories. And just, again, I mean, there was always just that shorthand of both. I mean, Superman's pal. And Jimmy would call Superman pal. Even in the pre-days that we didn't, when we thought that Clark's identity was still a secret from him. I mean, it's just, no, it really is. It's this awesome friendship and everything. And like you said, no, he wants nothing from him. He just likes hanging around him. And also, unfortunately, who else can deal with the fact, hey, I'm a werewolf. What do I do?
Yeah.
All right, Jim, don't worry. I got this. Don't worry. We'll figure it out.
The Jimmy is weirdness magnet was also something that we got to dive deep into. And I'm really grateful for that too, because there's, I've got a very deadpan way of drawing, for lack of that we talked about finding my style. My natural style as a cartoonist is to present the facts of the story and let the reader put two and two together and make judgments about them. And that works really, really well with a character for whom weirdness just pours all over him, like candy spilling out of a piñata. I could just, well, here's what's going on now. Look, yes, he's in the middle of a pie eating contest, and he's sprouted boar tusks.
And also, something that Matt introduced in the story as well, and I want to know how you handled it from an art standpoint. this weird relationship with Luther, and also the Olsen family and the Luther family kind of being these warring barons of Metropolis.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, he just reached into this wonderful, magnificent Amberson sort of vibe to the relationships of these folks. And it added so much to the world. One problem with a lot of DC stuff is because of the sliding timeline that everything has to take place on. You could lose a sense of history, but by going back with the history with the history of the town and the characters' ancestors, you can build them as part of a larger continuity without having to kick aside anything. I don't know if you can tell. I just did a little kicking motion. It was entirely off camera. Great visual storytelling here.
That's all right, man. Hilarious.
Big time pro here.
You're killing me.
Yeah. I liked all the historical stuff, and I always loved doing historical research. For a while I was the period pieces guy before I was along with being the crime guy. People would reach out to me to do period stuff all the time. I don't take it on anymore because just like with actual filming, it adds 50% of it. It takes half again as long to do a page, and people don't like it as much. But for short stuff in the middle of an ongoing story, it was fine. And so I liked doing Metropolis in the Deadwood era, Metropolis in the Magnificent Ambersons era, and I don't want to give too much away. I know the book's been out for a while, but there's still plenty of folks who haven't read it, and I don't want to do any spoilers. But I loved the revelation that Matt built into the story. I've been reading about these characters since I got my copy of Superman from the 30s to the 70s, I would say in 1974. So starting then, and the Max Fleischer Superman Encyclopedia.
Sure.
What Matt came up with absolutely fit with everything that I'd read. Of course, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's so funny you mentioned that. Bonanza published 30s to the 70s Superman collection, because I got that and the Batman volume, I believe, that Christmas of 74. Yeah. And it really blew my mind when I got them. And also, again, because of our age and stuff, those 100-page spectaculars. I mean, the 80-page Giants, I caught the tail end of that, but really, I was more of a 100-page spectacular kid. And the fact that we would get Golden Age, Silver Age, and Modern Stories all in one volume, comics were just comics, but it really informed us, I think, in the eras that preceded us. And it really made us appreciate, I think, those stories, especially being a little kid. Because, God, especially like those Justice League 100-pagers, and you'd get a great 40s all-star Justice Society story in the middle of those things. And they were great. And it was like, oh, look at this team. And I also, I love the costumes of the Golden Age characters. I mean, they were just more beyond cowls and capes. You'd get hoods and you'd get interesting combinations that I think as time went on, they made them sleeker and more, they ditched capes in a lot of ways and stuff. And it's a shame because I think it missed that theatrical kind of component of those original designs.
I absolutely agree. And my upbringing with comics was kind of strange. I mentioned I was fanatical about it, but I wasn't allowed to buy new comics. My family was not well by my dad had some very strong ideas about what was legitimate to spend money on and what wasn't. So 90% of the comics I had, I had gotten either from garage sales, flea markets, or they were stripped books, the comics that had the covers ripped off so that they could be returned and be pulped. And that also meant that if a comic was serialized, either I never saw the beginning or I never saw the end of it. I would just get random issues, and if it was
Yep.
it was a 3-parter, I don't know where the story was going or where it came from. But that meant that I was putting a lot of energy into trying to imagine the other half of the story. And
Sure.
that had a big part of my early development as of someone making comics. And I think the style agnosticism that you talked about earlier, a lot of that probably came from reading that weird mix. Okay, Superman looks like this Wayne Boring drawing, but he also looks like this Joe Shuster drawing, and he also looks like this Neil Adams drawing, and he also looks like this Kurt Swan drawing, and he also looks like this Jack Kirby drawing, which also kind of looks like a Kurt Swan drawing because they're pasting somebody else's face on it. So I think I was very comfortable very early on that there isn't one way that these things are supposed to look.
No, I agree, man. And then, I'm so glad you brought up the comics that had the covers torn off of them, because for younger people, if they don't know, newsstands wouldn't have to return the entire comic book. All they had to do was like slice off the cover. And so they, hey, I didn't sell 20 issues of Superman, so here's 20 covers back. And then they would go and take the actual comic, and I don't know how it went, but essentially they would wind up in bags of 3, and you'd get them for, a third of the price, even for 3 of them. And oh my God, I can't tell you how many Marvel comics I read that way and never knew how stories wound up. And, my copies of, Damian Hellstrom and a lot of the C and D level Marvel books and stuff, where I'd just be like, wow, this looks amazing. And, it's a cliffhanger. And God only knows if I'll ever see the next issue of this. And again, thank God the storytelling and the visuals were enough to keep me going. But it was just like, that's weird. But yeah, that was fun because you would discover a lot of comics that you wouldn't normally have picked up because they would be smart and they'd front the bag with a Spider-Man issue with the cover torn off. And then they'd slip in a Classic Illustrated or a Dell comic or one of these other off publishers and stuff. So no, I know exactly what you mean. And yeah, again, it was a really interesting way to read disjointed comics and stuff, but appreciate each issue for what it was.
Yeah, where I usually got them, there were 10 cents for each stripped comic, or 3 for a quarter. But that third one, like you said, was sandwiched in between 2 other books, and you didn't know until you opened the bag what you actually got. I wound up reading a lot of comics I never would have picked up, just because, that extra.
Already bought it. Yeah.
That.
That's great, man. That's so funny. Yeah, I didn't do as many flea markets. There was a great newsstand that was actually a physical building, but it was called the News Depot. And at the front, it was all newspapers and magazines. But in the back, they had back issues. And they had a lot of full with cover back issues as well. And it was so great. This was the early 70s. And they were all late Silver Age comics, mostly late 60s and very early 70s, 15-cent and 12-cent comics and stuff. Because when I started buying on my own with my 50-cent allowance, they were 20 cents each. So I could buy 2 comics a week. So that was, and I had enough for a pack of baseball cards. Yeah, so that was my 50 cents, It
would be a big adventure for me because there was a store actually the next neighborhood over. I would have to cross a pretty impressive steel span bridge in Pittsburgh, the Homestead High Level Bridge, to get to this other neighborhood, which was very, very industrial. It was right on top of one of those decaying steel mills, and I'd go to this terrifying, physically filthy nook that only sold things that were supposed to have been destroyed. That was all they carried were things that fell off the back of a truck. And I think the entire back half of the place was pornography, but
hilarious.
But right by the door was the stack of comics, and I would go in there afraid that I was going to be in trouble just for being inside that building. But I'd save up $1 from mowing my lawns, and I could come out of there with 12 comic books. And, holy cow, I was in hog heaven.
That's outstanding. Here, Jimmy wanted to say hello. Comic Works with Jimmy, another fine YouTuber. I'm going to put up his comment there. And he also wants you to convince me to keep growing out the beard.
Never the wrong.
Like I think I told you earlier, very Hemingway-esque. That's the vibe I'm going for.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So far so good. And I'll see. Every week I kind of decide. I'm like, all right, it's okay. It hasn't annoyed me yet. I'm gonna keep it going. So whatever. Did how was your COVID year? And I mean, it hasn't ended in a lot of ways, unfortunately. But I mean, it seems like at least we see the light at the end of the tunnel. But how are things going?
Yeah, I did better than most, but I don't want to put a brave face on it. It wrecked me pretty badly. I managed to, work stopped being what I did for a living, although it was that too, and started being this thing I could do where I would not think about other stuff. I've always been something of an internet addict, but man, this little magic box that all my friends lived in, I just got glued to it, and it turned me into some sort of weird cyborg, non-human thing. I spent the past 15 months stressing out and obsessively reading newspapers from other countries and keeping track of COVID vaccination statistics, like the way I used to keep track of batting averages for the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1979. Look at that, we're up to 21%. Oh yeah. Hearing each day's totals and recalculating percentages on the fly in my head just to feel like some sense of control for what's going on, so, some idea of what's happening. I handled it about as well as someone could who didn't actually come out of it a Shaolin master, but it chewed me up alive for 15 months, and I cannot wait to reemerge and show the world just how awful I look right now.
You look fine. Did you get your vaccines?
Cut off right here, man.
Oh, dude, as I tell my buddy Art Baltazar, I built like a mailbox right now. I understand. Can't wait to hit the pool. So and Jimmy says, and he's right. He's like, I just made a channel trailer for my channel, and Steve's interview is the first clip on it. Great guy, and his comic shop loves him as well. Very cool.
Thanks, Jimmy.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. But no, I know what you mean. Well, dude, that's when I started doing video. Was at the beginning of COVID, and again, I'm glad because really I get to connect with people like you that I like to see at shows, and it's as much helping you guys promote your product, but also, I mean, it's obviously based on this conversation, ridiculously social, and it's a chance for us to hang out and let viewers ask you questions directly as well. And it's the second best thing to having conventions. I'm sure Rose City already scheduled their late year show.
I believe so, yeah.
So but yeah, beyond would you do that local show, or are you? What do you think right now?
I mean, I'll be street legal with my vaccinations as of Thursday of this week.
Congrats, that's great.
So I guess I'll keep an eye on the variants and make sure that there's not something that's emerged that's contagious even for vaccinated folks. And
sure.
if so, I might do it. I don't envy anyone who has to make these choices. I mean, for me, it's a coin flip. I break even at conventions. The goal is just to meet fans and to promote the work. But for someone whose livelihood depends on either exhibiting at conventions or running a convention, I feel awful for having to make this.
No, I know those Artist Alley warriors as well, and again, that's. But I have to say, most of the creative community they've learned to adapt, and thank God, it sounds like everybody that put in the work and let people know, hey, I know we can't be together, but you can order my stuff online, whether it's original art or their creator-owned books or whatever. And thank God the fans are responding. And it's been a very interesting year as an observer and what I do with my podcast, talking to everybody about it. And I can also speak to my own success in terms of doing the adapting that I did. So, that's all been positive under a very weird, like you said, 15 months or so. Yeah. I mean, what you were telling me off the air, currently you've been filling in on some DC stuff?
Yeah, I did a short story within a larger story that Gene Yang wrote for, I think it's the Superman Batman book. I did a story for the Old Guard anthology that Greg Rucka and Leo Fernandez are doing. Matt Fraction wrote that, actually.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. It's a bit of backstory for Andy, the central character.
Yes.
That was great. It was wonderful to work with Matt again, and on a story that is absolutely not a comedy. It's just this brief, rough, sad, sort of Western set in Australia.
Oh, wow. Andy is Charlize Theron's character in the film, right? Yeah.
And Fraction wrote a wonderful story for that, and I got to be the guy who does grim naturalism again, which was nice. Currently, I'm doing a delightful Teen Titans Academy two-parter written by Tim Sheridan, and I'm incredibly nervous because I'm filling in for Rafa Sandoval, who draws like an angel. He's so good.
Yeah.
And I'm a good storyteller, but my drawing, I can't do pretty like that. And I'm hoping that folks don't, folks who are looking for that sort of spectacular beauty that he brings to the page are disappointed by my meat and potatoes approach to storytelling. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying Tim's script a whole lot. And after that, I should have checked. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say what it is, but I've got a mini series that I'll be doing at DC that, and more than that, I don't think I can say yet.
Okay. No problem. Again, as I reassure people like Clark Bull and publicity at DC and all the creators, like, hey man, I'm not here to fuck up anybody's marketing plan. It's cool. We can wait. And again, it's a great excuse to have you back in a couple months when you are able to talk about it. So that's awesome. I got to tell you, honestly, I really love all the new status quo that's coming out of DC. I think it's very interesting. And I think they took the kernel of what I think Didia wanted to do with 5G and really kind of massaged it into a lot of interesting ideas. And I mean, really, I think the Bat Office right now is firing on all cylinders. Same thing with the Superman Office. I think what they're doing in Titans right now is really, really interesting as well. So, and also all the other quirky books as well. I think I have been really, again, I like the lineup. And then not to say that I don't have my Marvel favorites right now too. I just spoke with Jason Aaron. I mean, my God, his Avengers run is still ridiculously amazing. And I'm looking forward to starting actually, I think in 2 days, Heroes Reborn. And the fun that they're going to have with that little mini event that's happening this month and in June. So all that's really cool. No, I mean, really. And again, the experimentation that people have chosen to do, like just talk to Brubaker about Reckless and how he decided to not do monthlies and really just like, nope, graphic novel. Every 4 or 5 months, new graphic novel. And they've been fantastic. They've been terrific.
I'd love to get onto a project like that, where we're just doing completed stories and putting them out when they're done. But I totally get why publishers like the serialization model. And I was saying I don't want to be the guy who has to make decisions for conventions. I also don't want to be the person who has to work the spreadsheets in publishing.
Sure.
Boy, there's have to be some rough decisions.
Well, that's the thing, man. I mean, again, you and I come from that 20-cent comic era, and now when a 20-page comic is $4.99, it's like, I don't know, man. And that's why, again, I appreciate the experimentation DC is doing, where you're getting kind of a, at least a 40-page comic for $6.99 or whatever. And the again, everyone, the writers, I mean, the artists, forgive me if this is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the challenge is more of a writing standpoint when you've got a shorter story, like you said, some of the shorter stories, but maybe not. I mean, obviously, then you've got to compress the action as well into a 10-page story. So I suppose it's a challenge on both sides of the equation.
I don't remember who said this, but with any form, whether it's the comic short or the graphic novel, it's not that you're restricted to that size; it's that you get to work at that size. It's a shape you get to fill, and there's a wonderful pleasure with working with those kind of constraints, with those kind of it's. I feel like almost any storytelling benefits from coming at it with an attitude of anything that doesn't add to the truth detracts from it, and so if you're really taking your story seriously, you want to strip away everything that doesn't land with maximum impact, and that can make telling a short story a wonderful exercise, as opposed to a pain in the butt or something restrictive. You aren't stuck with this format. You get to use that format. It's
Understood.
It's container.
Well, and like you said, no, that's the real estate you're given, and what you do with it, that's the trick. So I can appreciate that. No, honestly, beyond these individual issues that have, two backup stories or whatever, I've really enjoyed too the anthology specials that DC has been putting out in the last few years. And I don't know if you ever had an opportunity to work on any of those.
I just did two of them during lockdown. I did a Harley Quinn Hanukkah special. It was a DC Christmas special, but it's Harley, so I got
yeah, that's awesome.
And I did a story of the first issue of the Superman Red and Blue series.
Steve, I did read that. You did a hell of a job. That was great. I love that book. I think that's an amazing idea. And again, it's just like Batman Black and White. It's like, let's boil down the characters to what makes them great, and that you are. I mean, how many pages was that? 10 pages? What was that?
Just 8. And
wow,
Brendan wrote a wonderful story, and my studio mate Ron Chan, I reached out to him to see if he would color it, and because Ron has a design sensibility like nobody else in this industry. He's a magnificent artist, and he took the art places that I never would have thought. And I never would have thought it would go, and I loved it. I was like, oh boy, man, yeah, stuff that design choices that absolutely worked. That given a year, I wouldn't have come up with.
I understand. I was trying to see if I could find real fast a cover of Superman Red and Blue, but all right, I'll stop. Do you? I mean, this is always a standard question that comes up. Do you have a bucket list of heroes that you haven't had a chance to draw yet that you'd like to, as far as story wise?
Not really a bucket list. There's folks who I'd love to do a story with, though. DC's hired me to draw a Swamp Thing story that Swamp Thing wasn't in. It was a great it was a great Brian Vaughan story, but Swamp Thing wasn't actually in it. And I got to do a pinup for Swamp Thing, but I've never actually drawn him in continuity, unless you count the important supporting character we had in Jimmy Olsen's Swamp Thong. But I would love to draw a straight Swamp Thing story someday. Both the Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson stuff and the more Bissett, Tolban, Veitch stuff. Just blew me away at two different distinct phases of my comics appreciation as a youngster. The Swamp Thing is actually why I became a cartoonist, frankly.
Wow.
I had, all through high school I was reading comics, but I didn't really, they weren't, I didn't see myself doing them yet. I would draw for myself, but I didn't see there was a way to actually make a living at it. When I was at Penn State, which I mentioned earlier, I was working an after-school job at a video store, and I was reading this fanzine. It was a British fanzine that was interviewing Steve Bissett and some other folks. It was an all Swamp Thing issue, and I was just, oh, this is great. Bissett's talking about the Kubert School and what an awesome place it was, and how he'd be sitting up at midnight talking with Lee Elias about, and I was, oh wow, this is Hogwarts, this is Nirvana, this is, but I couldn't make the leap. And as I'm reading this, as I'm blowing off my job and sitting behind the counter reading this interview, a customer comes in, tries to get my attention, looks and sees what I'm looking at, and says, "Oh, is that an interview with Steve Bissett? He went to the art school that I go to." And this guy was an animation student named Tom Toby, who was home on break from his first semester at the Kubert School. And I got to ask him a bunch of questions about the place, and in the process of that 5-minute conversation, it went from being this pipe dream I'm reading about in the fanzine to something that someone like me could go to.
That's amazing. That's excellent. Who were your teachers when you were at Kubert?
One of the first big influences there was a guy named Sal Amendola, who did a lot of Batman stuff in the 70s and 80s.
I remember Sal.
Yeah, Sal was a great teacher. Oh man,
cool.
He really cared and was super thoughtful about comics and storytelling and illustration. Joe, of course, was great. George Pratt, I learned a lot from.
Fantastic, sure.
An artist named Ron Wagner, who your viewers might know from, he did a long run on G.I. Joe and Nth Man and stuff like that. Ron was a great artist and really knew his stuff. One of the most important teachers there was Jose Delbo, who just got famous again for drawing a bunch of pictures of Wonder Woman that got turned into multi-million-dollar JPEGs through some.
Oh, he's selling the NFTs, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I'm not on the NFT train at all. I can't hold it against Jose because, I mean, he was a great artist, but he was still drawing rotary dials on telephones in the late 80s when I was in school with him. So I don't think he's really up to, as he approaches his 90th year, I don't think he really knows.
Wow. Yeah, I understand.
But boy, I learned a lot from him. He was an old school Argentinian hard ass, and man, he was tough, and he would kind of go from person to person, and just with this infinite sadness that we weren't grasping what he had presented.
Wow.
Oh, Mr. Lieber, this horse, it looks like a dog. I don't want to see the Lone Ranger riding on Rin Tin Tin. This isn't good.
Steranko could be tough like that. And a very good friend of mine, Doug Klauba, was getting great notes from Steranko. And at first he was so bummed. And he showed me the email. And I'm like, Doug, read between the lines. This guy loves you. I'm like, this guy's being tough because he knows you can raise your game to the ambition that he is laying out for you. And I'm like, this is all good. And I did convince him. I'm like, this is not somebody saying you suck. This is somebody saying you could be so much better if you put this much, and you're already good, but I know you can gut up here. And that's why, Jim's politics aside, it's like Jim can really be a great teacher in the right circumstance. And I always appreciated that he gave Doug that kind of guidance. So Yeah. So no, and again, that's what you need. You don't need your mom telling you you're great. You need Jose Delbo telling you, no, you're not good at this. You got to get better.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing right. I want someone to attack my work with surgical precision and tell me everything I'm doing wrong, so I can cut that shit out like cancer tissue.
Yes.
Maybe one of the most valuable teachers there was someone with no comics credits whatsoever. He was a guy named Ben Ruiz. He was the life drawing teacher. He had been a student of Bert Hogarth's in the 1950s.
Wow.
And,
wow.
Fascinating guy. He had sort of had a breakdown. Did you ever read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
Sure. Yes.
The narrator of that has had a breakdown because he can't define quality. And Ben had the same thing. He was a very, very oriented towards listening to his instructors. He had gone through World War II, and it was listening to his drill instructor that kept him alive. And so he got out of there. He's on the GI Bill, and he studied. He went to he studied under Hogarth and Silas Rhodes at the School of Visual Arts, and they told him, they drilled him in academic art, and here's how you get it right. You get the anatomy right. You get the perspective right. You follow color theory. You follow design theory. There are rules that set you up for quality. And he continued his education, and he went to Cooper Union. And at Cooper Union, the late 50s, all of a sudden abstract expressionism is in, and he's got all these other very powerful authorities, people who he's been told to put his education in the hands of, who are telling him, no, don't follow the rules of perspective. That's just a cheap trick. Don't try to create the illusion of depth on a piece of paper or a canvas. That's lying to viewers. This is a flat surface, not a window on a scene. You want to create abstract symbols. You don't want to render reality. And so he had these two powerful voices in his head telling him completely opposite things and no way to reconcile them. And so he lost it for a few years. And what saved him was commercial art. In commercial art, drawing the picture that solves the client's problem is quality. That's what's good. And so Ben, as a teacher, he maintained his way of. He learned how to teach from being in the Army, and so he would teach us like he was a drill instructor. But it was always with the goal of learning to solve problems. Set a specific goal and figure out the pictorial solution to that problem. And he was a wonderful hard ass to us. He would look over what you're doing. Oh, Steve, you're signing the drawing here. Don't go signing that drawing, because you're not creating artwork. You are responding to the problems I have given you. And you're giving your answers in a pictorial form. You're going to put your name at the top of the paper like this is your math class. You're not your signature like you're an artist. You're not an artist.
Wow.
You're a first-year art student. You have nothing to express but your own ignorance.
Wow.
Yes. Whoa.
Yeah.
And
tough love.
But it was what a bunch of first-year art students needed to hear. Get your wrist off your forehead and start accumulating skills, because you're going to be running into all kinds of stuff out there once you have to make a living doing this, and you want to have the skill set to respond to those problems.
That makes a lot of sense, man. No, absolutely. God, honestly, man, between you and Ilse Chartier this afternoon, it's been a while since I've talked to a pure artist. And it's great to get this kind of insight into the creative process that only you guys can convey. And in fact, Jimmy says we need to start a GoFundMe for Steve so he can get a mic and video set up so he can explain all this stuff once a week. I agree with all that. And Zevius says, "Good evening." Good evening, Zevius. Thank you for joining us. Absolutely.
If you want more of this gold, it's follow me on Twitter at stevelieber.com.
There you go, man. Absolutely.
There's the problem solving for you right there. Yeah.
No. Would you ever want to do any sort of like teaching yourself? And
I
saw you mentor people at Helioscope that afternoon. Two young people came, and you were giving everybody there, but you were giving great notes on their work.
I love doing that. I've taught actual classes, and that can be a bummer because I don't ever want to teach someone who doesn't want to be in the room to learn. And
go on.
In any kind of organized classroom, there's half a dozen people who were there because they needed the credit or something like that, and that's a bummer. I was brought in as a guest lecturer to an arts college with a comics program a while back, and they had assigned the script to the Whiteout sequel, Whiteout Melt. They had a copy of the first issue script, and they assigned a 6-page sequence from that for me to review because they figured, all right, he's familiar with the script, he knows the problems that script presented.
Sure.
And a couple of the students really knocked themselves out. One or two of them showed me things that I hadn't realized were in there. I was like, oh, that's good. That's a whole angle that I could have pursued that I didn't, and that was tremendously cool. And one guy turned in something that couldn't have taken 45 minutes. And it felt like a giant middle finger towards me into the stick. He just shat this out because my opinion is meaningless. And then one guy, and I will take this to my grave, swiped me.
Wow.
For his homework, he laid 3 pieces of typing paper over pages that I drew.
Wow. And
turned in my work to me for me to grade. And I looked at the guy, and it was like I was in a Coen Brothers movie. He just looked back at me like this. I could see the chewing gum at the end of his tongue and everything. And I thought I could yell at him, but what's the purpose? I was like, just keep doing what you're doing there, buddy. Yeah, I'm sure the future you deserve is right on its way.
Last year before the pandemic hit, I was approached to teach for a semester at Columbia College here in Chicago about audio production. Mm-hmm. And sadly, 2 months into the semester, that's when the lockdown started.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you mean, man. And really, I exactly as you said, a third of the class really wanted to be there and really wanted to learn, and it was great talking to them. That third that did not want to be there, it's like, okay, you're wasting my time. I'm wasting your time. I understand it's a credit that you need, but you're not putting any effort in the work, and see you later. And it really, it turned me off in terms of wanting to do formal teaching in that way. And so I don't mind when someone comes to me and says, can you give me tips on my podcast or broadcasting or anything like that? I'm much better in a one-on-one situation where I know the person gives a shit.
Yeah.
And if they don't give a shit, then it's like, and sadly there've been a few that have been steered my way that really weren't interested in learning. And it's just, how do I make money? And it's like, yeah, we're done. We're done talking. It's all right.
Yeah. So. Fortunately, I've got a big itch to actually, to mentor and to instruct, but I get to scratch that by through the mentorship program at Helioscope. We've had at this point, I think 76 people have cycled through there, and that's just people who were formerly in the program. Then a lot more who were friends of the studio or friends of somebody in the studio who came by, or just people who I met at a Comic-Con, and that's usually rewarding. When I see someone bring me 8 pages that they really put a lot of work into, and I give them feedback. And then next year at the convention, they show me a new set of pages that where they've clearly incorporated everything I told them last time and figured all that out. Now they're solving new problems. That's the greatest feeling in the world. I did a Comic-Con in Mexico City a couple of years ago, And that was an interesting challenge where I was trying to give feedback on portfolios through a translator. Fortunately, my translator, her boyfriend was an illustrator, so she had a lot of the vocabulary. So I was able to talk about these things. And between that and just making little diagram sketches, I was able to get things through. And one kid there showed, and I say kid because I don't think she was old. I don't think she was 18. Showed me 3 pages. Terrific stuff. A lot of problems. I went over them. I said, this composition could be stronger. The interesting part of the story is this and not this. So maybe if you rework this to do that, get this off the panel. Fixing things. And then the next day of the con, kid came back with the 3 pages redrawn, having incorporated all this stuff overnight. Went and read 3 pages. Like, oh shit! There it is. You've got the stuff.
That's great. God, and that's got to. And again, the third of my class that gave a shit. It was wonderful that they would get those aha moments and understand what I was trying to teach, and would show it in the next production and stuff. So no, I absolutely understand what you're saying. Here, Zombie Jock says, I met Steve in my first Comic-Con. Got a great big barter commission from him. If you get a chance, I would 10 out of 10 recommend getting one from him when cons come back. And Jimmy said, I taught a writing seminar at my old high school. Half of them didn't give a fuck. And it was just like, why? I was like, why you're here? I thought they went to see an alumni flop, but the other half of the group were great. And that kid ended up being Ryan Stegman. Very nice. Very nice. Excellent.
I don't think Ryan has anything to learn from me. I think, a person who did some mentoring for me years ago, Don Simpson, Megaton Man, if you remember.
Sure.
Don had a stretch for several years in the early 90s when I was first breaking in, where he stopped giving, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, but he stopped giving portfolio reviews because he had a very, very clearly developed storytelling sense and aesthetic that was 180 degrees away from where the industry was going. And he said he was afraid that any advice he would give to a young artist would make it harder for them to get work. And I get it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, when I came out of art school, I was initially a little panicked because I graduated Cubert's in 1990, or didn't graduate. I still owe them $20, so I don't have my diploma. But yeah, I got out of there in 1990 with a set of storytelling and illustrative skills that were state of the art for like 1958. And all of a sudden, the look of comics just warped incredibly. Everyone was seizing on a few stylistic ticks of Michael Golden's, and had morphed into this whole strange set of riffs and storytelling choices that were alien to me. And I felt like I had just graduated from Juilliard, and the only musicians who were getting hired were in Metallica cover bands. Or something.
I understand. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
No. And Don, Don Simpson, like you said, Megaton Man, very outrageous humor, almost a parody of kind of classic Kirby action and stuff. Didn't he also do Destroy? Wasn't that one of his?
No, that was Scott McCloud.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought Don drew Destroy because, it had that same Megaton Man sort of vibe to it. God, not only the comic, but just even the ads for Megaton Man that would be in Amazing Heroes back in the 80s and stuff. I always loved that stuff. So, that's funny. Everyone's still discovering my beard. Here, I'm gonna real fast for people who don't know. There it is. Yeah, how you doing, everybody? So it's coming in nice. When you see it in person, there's a lot of white in there that might be invisible to the camera. You'll forgive my vanity for showing it, but yeah, it's No, it's coming along. And yeah, right now, as long as I keep the beard out of my mouth that grows, near my lips and stuff, and that's easy to trim, I'm like, all right, I'll keep it going. So it's all right. Jimmy says, "Don't worry, Steve. You're right. Reminds me of a modernist take on Kurt Swan." Oh, that's an interesting observation.
I read a lot of Kurt Swan in my youth. I'm sure he's in there.
Absolutely. And Isham says, "I would totally be in the first row, taking copious notes from any class taught by John or Steve." Well, that's very nice.
Very cool. Yeah. Kurt Swan's thinking is probably in there. I don't think I ever consciously studied his work, but his illustrative ethos of what is the situation that's happening, what's the most clear and direct way to present it. That's how I think about things. I steer away from anything that's conspicuously flashy most of the time, because I want people to be thinking about the events in the story,
right,
rather than the illustration on the page in front of them.
I so agree. I love that series of heads that floats around the internet and stuff that Kurt did of Superman, all just facial reactions, and every type from shock to laughing to thinking and everything. And it's great because really, I mean, there's another podcaster that I'm friends with, but every now and then his opinions or observations, I'm like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And he's like, yeah, I hate Kurt Swan. He's too simple. And it's like, man, do you not get Kurt Swan on any level? Shame on you. But okay, I mean, art is how it hits the individual, and you can't, he's not wrong, but he is wrong. If you will.
I think he's a Saturday Evening Post illustrator applied to comics.
No question. Very Rockwellian. Absolutely. You're right, man. That's a very good observation. God, I love learning that Rockwell's nephew was an assistant to Kniff and others. And I can't remember his first name, but that was kind of one. What's that?
I think Dick Rockwell.
Yes, that's right. There you go. Yeah, and I mean, really, what an eye-opening thing to learn, because he was a fine artist on his own and everything. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to learn those things again. And really, I'm an amateur historian or student of comic, history, and God, I love pouring through the strips and just the greats, but even the ones that only were regional comic strip artists, and the people that I discover through representations of their strip work and stuff like that. And there are so many wonderful artists that we really don't know their stuff unless you really dig for it and discover them.
Yeah, I am endlessly jealous of young artists coming up today. I mean, I was, as I mentioned, obsessed as a young reader, to the point where I had gone through the entire Pittsburgh library system, finding every single book that we printed that had anything about comics that I could find. I would use the microfilm at the library to read old newspaper strips, just desperate. I would do anything that didn't involve spending money. I would do to learn more.
That's great.
It was hard. There wasn't a lot out there. Now, oh my God, you can go to any library in the country, and through interlibrary loan, you can read every single comic strip Milton Caniff ever did, every Dick Tracy, every Prince Valiant, every Flash, every Peanuts, all of them. It's all there for the asking. Or you can go to some weird Russian website and steal it and have it all on your own computer.
No, you're right. And honestly, it's the greatest resource for comic fans that are on a budget. And I love that the comic app the library app Hoopla has so many free comics on it. Yeah. And all you need is the library card. And Jimmy will forgive me. Jimmy put up what's a library, and I know you're just being cute, Jimmy, but really, man, that is really kind of one of my pet causes in the last 10 years. And as people, don't use the library in the way they could, and I'm really glad that a lot of libraries have transformed themselves into modern information centers. And also, God, here in Chicago, you want to learn how to like shoot video, you can go to the library and take classes and take free classes and things like that. And really, libraries have really upped their game as it just boasts to just being, shelves of books and microfiche and microfilm. And again, I'm from that same era, man, and I can't tell you how many things I've researched, both for pleasure and for work, where I was pouring through magazines and newspapers to get the correct stories and everything. So, no, it's incredible. And yeah, again, I there's a few podcasters that actually have library backgrounds, and I'm always like stress that because you're part of a very important cog in the machinery of comic books and getting that stuff to people and stuff. So, I went to the book expo a couple of years ago when it was here in Chicago, and it was just so great seeing the comic and library connection and how eager librarians were, because I mean it's all reading. I mean, and it's great to get people. My own nephew had trouble really enjoying reading. And his, I tell this story all the time. His dad was a real jock, and his sons were big jocks as well. But the little one in particular really struggled with reading. So I started giving him comics, and he enjoyed them. And at first, my brother-in-law's like, dude, I appreciate it, but, the kid's a jock. And I like almost like afraid of the nerd level. And I'm like, dude, he's reading. And I don't know if you noticed, but he's enjoying it, and he's enjoying reading for a change. And he's like, he thought for a second, and he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. He's like, you're right. He goes, absolutely. He goes, I wasn't thinking. I'm like, no, it's cool, man. And again, goddamn, I mean, and it too. It's so great that the nerd culture has really invaded pop culture in the way that it has in the last 25 years. And it really has become water cooler conversation, and people can't wait for the next film or episode of things that are based on comics. And that's wonderful. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, I see another comment here. I think Steve severely undersells his ability to make his characters not just entirely unique, but infinitely expressive ones too. Oh no, I think Steve's aware of it, man.
I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not. And fortunately, I'm good at all the stuff I value, and everything that I'm not good at, I've decided has no value at all. No. It took me a long time to learn to get my comics characters to be as expressive as they are. A big part of that was embracing photography. When I started out, I had some dumb art school ideas that I got from reading art criticism that says that a real artist would never use photo reference. And it held me back for years, and it's double idiocy because over time I learned that when Neil Adams was doing newspaper strips, he wouldn't even draw a toaster without photographing it and tracing the photograph. And so there was this hugely valuable tool for artists, photo reference, that I had just abandoned, and it was like I was going out into a baseball field wearing only one cleat. It made no sense. And I'm particularly lucky because I work, or when there's not a pandemic, I work in a studio full of a dozen other brilliant cartoonists, all of whom know how to pose for another comics artist. They know exactly how to take a pose and hold it and make a shape that's going to look good when converted into line. And know how to exaggerate in a way that people feel very self-conscious when you put a camera in front of them. And my comics would not be as funny or as expressive as they are without the help of the cartoonists who I work with. Superior Foes, my secret weapon in that was Ben Dewey, who posed for most of the boomerang shots. And Ben is the nicest, humblest guy in the world. But when I told him to be a leering asshole for boomerang, his face would just turn upside down. It was brilliant. All the scenes with boomerang and his unnamed girlfriend in there are these these unnamed because who she is a spoiler. All the scenes between the two of them are like this pas de deux between Ben Dewey and Lucy Bellwood, both brilliant cartoonists, and they would just get these wonderful interactions with doing things with their faces that I couldn't have made up in 1,000 years. But all I had to do was art direct the scene, tell him what the mood is, what's going on, give her a notion of what her reaction is, and tell her where to put her hands or something, and snap reference. I'd snap 7 or 8 pictures, and find the ones that gave me what I needed. Here's something that I always tell young artists about using photo reference. There is a ton of information in every single photo you're ever going to have in front of you. Some of that information is going to make your picture better. The rest of that information is going to fuck your picture up. It's your job to suck up all the good stuff and throw away everything else. And that's the art of using photo reference in comics.
That's fantastic. Art Baltazar is enjoying our conversation so much, he's going to start following you on Instagram. I don't know if you've met Art yet or not.
We may have waved hello or shaken hands at some con in the Midwest somewhere. At this point, every convention I've ever done since 1992 has all turned into one convention that happened. It's like Marvel Comics is the war. It just happened back then.
Yep.
Sometime a year or two after the Fantastic Four took off.
No, I understand. I've had that same feeling doing Word Balloon for coming on my 16th anniversary. Next Monday is my 16th
Congratulations.
anniversary.
Wow.
How about that? Isn't that crazy?
Oh my God.
Here, Greg says some nice things. He says, Steve came to Terrificon, stayed an extra day to see the Norman Rockwell Museum. I'm sure that was ridiculously informative.
Connecticut, here I come. That sounds great.
Yeah, no kidding, man. I know. I really look forward to. I know Mitch is planning the next live event. He's under a lot of restrictions in terms of attendance, and obviously because of that, then he's on a limited budget in terms of who he could bring. But we're all looking forward to when he can really reopen it again and help him out and support Terrificon. Number one vegan food in the world is okay. I didn't know that. That's good. The number one vegan food truck in the world is Connecticut. Well, I've sampled the Portland food trucks, so I don't know, man.
I can feel a dozen food trucks within a mile of my home right now. They're just squaring up and putting up their fists on that one, but we'll see. We'll see about this.
I hear you, man. That's awesome. Well, dude, great hangout, and I'm so excited that everything is going well. And again, look for Steve. Have your Titans books already been released?
No, I'm not sure when they're coming out. I think I'm doing issues 4 and 5, and I think issue 2 just came out, so I guess 2 months from now.
Okay, and then in the fall, Oni is putting Underground back out.
Yep. So
that's great. You and Jeff Parker.
Yep.
So that's terrific. Everybody look forward to that. Certainly go back in the catalog and grab, if you've never read The Fix, if you've never read Superior Foes of Spider-Man, if you've never read Whiteout, all these great stories that Steve. I mean, certainly the Road to Perdition stuff, I can't recommend enough. Really, the story really went beyond. Of course, Jimmy Olsen. Hold on, there we go. Boom, there we go. Jimmy Olsen, and of course, Whiteout. That's excellent, man. No, it's truly, Steve. It's really been great getting to know you over these years, and it's great to see you. And my best to Sarah. And truly, yeah, I look forward to when we can be face to face again. I have every intention of coming back to Portland. I'm going to probably pick a non-Rose City week. I don't know. I thought, well, no one will be busy until the con. so clearly they'll have time during the week. Nobody had time. Not even Brian. I'm living at Brian's house. And Brian's like, you mind if I go away for a few years? I'm like, work. I don't want to mess you up. And thankfully I brought enough of my own work to work on podcast wise. So I'm like, I'll be fine, man. I'm like, he gave me a room and I'm like, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's great. But it was, and also like an idiot, Ruck is like promoting Stumptown before it debuts on ABC. So he's like totally overworked that week. And I barely see Greg and Jen. It was ridiculous. So, let's see here. Final question from Jimmy. From an artist's point of view, when you make the comics, so you don't get to have the experience that the audience does, is there a different type of love when you're reading the script? I suppose is the final production.
What I see in the script is it's all about possibility. It's two things. It's possibility and it's problems. What can I bring to life with the script? What can I make a comic that'll make the reader feel? And how do I solve this 22-page crossword puzzle that's been given to me here?
Sure.
A lot of it is solving the puzzle of it, but yeah, the biggest thing for me is just looking at it and thinking, oh yeah, I can take these words that this writer has given me and make a comic that will make somebody laugh out loud or shiver in fear or shudder from cold, or just get excited or whatever. It's seeing that possibility. What can I do to make pictures, to make a story?
Very cool, man. That's great. Oh, Jimmy sent me an email and gives us his best. That's very nice. Jimmy and I will be talking about Doctor Who at some point because Jimmy's a massive Doctor Who fan, as am I. So I have a feeling our podcast will get together and have a nice conversation about Doctor Who in the near future. But Steve, thanks a lot for hanging out, and it was great. And I point everyone to your bibliography of work, and there's plenty to choose from in a lot of different genres, from comedy to serious tension and drama and crime and all the like from Steve Lieber. So check it out. And tomorrow on Word Balloon, I'm going to talk to Zach Cruz, who wrote an amazing book about Steve Ditko.
Oh, cool.
We're going to talk about Steve Ditko. And beyond that, everything's kind of in motion, but there'll be more Word Balloon Live this week. And I still have to release Rob. Jesus, now I'm blanking. Shame on me. Age is creeping up on me. Lots of good interviews coming up still that are in the bank. That might have been released as Word Balloon Live videos, but the audios are coming. If you missed my conversation this afternoon with Elsa Chartier, I highly recommend that you check that out as well. But thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, get vaccinated. Let's go.